Hello and welcome to this webinar. My name is Helle Nielsen. I'm event and marketing coordinator at Interacoustics. Today's webinar is about Affinity Callisto software update. And before we start, I just have a few practical information to give you. As you might have noticed, all participants have been muted. Which is done just in order to reduce any background noise to make this a more pleasant experience for everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the instant message box, which is on the left side of your screen. All questions will be collected during the webinar and will be answered at the end of the webinar session, where we will have a Q&A session. In case you have any technical problems or you need other support in relation to the webinar, please send me a mail. You see the email address here. It's hen@interacoustics.com. Now I want to present Dennis Mystery, which is today's presenter. Dennis, please take over the presentation and start your presentation.
Hello, thank you, Helle. I'd just like to introduce myself to begin. I'm a UK audiologist, and I've been the clinical product manager for hearing aid fitting at Interacoustics since November 2013. Today sat with me is also my colleague Ola Lundsgaard, and I'll now pass on to him so that he can introduce himself.
Yes, hello. My name is Ola Lundsgaard. I'm the technical product manager, and I have been working at Interacoustics the last 22 years. I have been working within the hearing aid fitting area since January 2012.
Okay. Thank you, Ola. So today I'm going to be presenting the Affinity Callisto and Equinox software upgrade, and specifically focusing on why you should upgrade. So the biggest feature of the new release is the compatibility and function of the TBS10, allowing hit testing and real ear to coupler fitting within the Callisto. I must inform you all ahead of going further within this presentation that this is a lighter release, meaning that the main feature is this, and we've taken some smaller improvements and improved that within the software as well. Therefore, the duration of this may not fill the time that was allocated in the first information within the invitation. So the biggest thing that we have is the TBS10. And then, as mentioned, we've taken a handful of items and we'll be presenting a few of them today as to improvements within the software. So these other improvements we've grouped within the different product areas, and within the common area, so general use, we've implemented the feature that protocol names can no longer be created with an asterisk in the title. We've also added the ability to change a graph title on combined print view graphs. We've changed the way that the calibration is performed so that default values are now appearing for new transducers. We've also removed the need for each start of the software suite in order to delete custom protocols. Within the ORD module, we've now implemented units, so it displays what values are actually shown against the CPT AMA and PTA averaging methods, which is shown in audiometry. And we've given better handling via a notification for the hearing loss simulator when it's launched with incompatible transducers, i.e. insert phones. Moving on to the next page, we go into the REM module, and we've improved the handling of REM and visible speech mapping measurements and their targets when running multiple measurements. This is more of a usability function. We've added into the Callisto suite, so this was already present in the Affinity and Equinox suite, the ability to add custom targets within the visible speech mapping screen. Also, another feature for the Callisto is we've now got a setup button for IEC 60118-15 settings, and this is typically for percentile analysis. We've also improved the handling of the software suite when opening REM sessions which have been recorded by a competitor or other vendors. We've updated the REM measurement for binaural REM continuous modes. This is a nice way to refresh the measurement and the target without having to restart the test and adding time to your session. So this is actually a time-saving improvement. And finally, we've improved the handling of no-response AC data with null targets. So as mentioned, I would like to begin with the TBS-10, and we are very pleased to introduce a new passive test box for Callisto. This is called the TBS-10, and it can be purchased alongside or as an additional accessory for your Callisto. It allows you to perform hearing aid diagnostics and coupler-based hearing aid fittings, so RECDs. And this is offered in a nice, neat modular solution for use within your clinic to give a professional impression. The addition of this test box for the Callisto also brings the HIT module into the Callisto suite. And for familiarity and for usability and for ease of learning, this appears the same as and is controlled in exactly the same way as the Affinity and Equinox HIT module. As in the Affinity and Equinox module, the use of this module requires a paid license, so it's exactly the same. It looks and feels the same as the Affinity and Equinox. The TBS-10 is a passive hitbox, and it requires a connection to the Callisto in order to perform the measurements. This is because there is no internal components within the TBS-10 to control and drive it. Therefore, the Callisto is the brain for the TBS-10. It can be connected to the Callisto in a similar way to the coupler base. So as you can see in this image here, we have a connecting wire with jacks 1 plugging into the free field output and jacks 3 plugging into the talk back and coupler mic. Jack 4 plugs into the back of the TBS-10, and jack 2 I'll explain in a moment. Here you can see a connected example of the TBS-10 alongside a Callisto. Even though we've added the TBS-10, we have not removed the coupler base from the item list, meaning that you can still buy this for a more portable solution when working away from the hospital or clinical environment that you're used to working from. In comparison to the Affinity test box, the TBS-10 has some limitations. These limitations mean that you cannot perform telecoil and battery current drain measurements. Protocols which include these measurements, for example, the ANSI 3.22 standard as shown at the top here, will have the measurements such as battery current drain and the telecoil measurements grayed out. This has been done in this way so that we can include the protocol so that we're following the standard. However, they will prevent you from performing this. Should you wish to perform the battery current drain measurement, then you can purchase an additional battery current drain meter via part number 8108391. In the future, we will support telecoil measurements with the TBS-10, and this can be done with the existing hardware and without any amendment to it. So as you buy the TBS-10 now, will be functional for telecoil measurements in the future. And that's just simply through a software upgrade. Should you wish to connect the TBS-10 to the Callisto for HIT measurements and RECDs, but also use a loudspeaker for REM measurements, you can do this by using the existing Y cable and connect it as you do with a single speaker as normal, and then attach the TBS-10 by connecting the yellow FF plug into the FF2 port. You can then connect the TB coupler or the microphone for the coupler into the TB coupler jack on the Callisto, and then you have the option to attach the battery simulator into the battery simulator should you wish to purchase this. On doing this, you need to ensure that you're configuring your software correctly within the general setup to allow this to function correctly. And on the next page is a connected example of this as well. So here you can see the physical connection as per the diagram shown previously. Both this image and the diagram are shown in the additional information for further information later on. I'd also like to inform you of an intended limitation that we've made with the TBS-10 and the Callisto. So the TBS-10 cannot be configured with the Callisto to have two free field outputs. This means that you cannot have two loudspeakers and the TBS-10 connected simultaneously. And again, this is an intended limitation, and should people wish to work using this setup, then we recommend them to look towards the Affinity. Okay. So I'd now like to move on to the features and improvements that we'd included in the list at the start. And I'd like to begin with just some of the common settings. And we've removed the ability to add an asterisk to the protocol title in all of our protocols in ORD, REM, and HIT. In our previous software suites and also within Affinity and Equinox, a asterisk in the title indicates a temporary change has been made. And we could also, in the previous software suites, allow the user to create a protocol with an asterisk in the name. And this led to some confusion because it was unsure as to whether the protocol was titled with an asterisk or an actual temporary change had been applied. So to prevent this confusion and make the system much easier to use, we have removed the ability to add an asterisk within the protocol name, making it much easier to follow. So as you can see here, on attempt to try to add an asterisk, you will not be able to. It will enter nothing. Into the next screen and the next improvement, this is within the print wizard. When adding graphs which have multiple measurements, so as an example shown in this screen, you can see here that a graph has been added to combine both OSPL 90 and response curves. And this is in HIT, however, this is also applied to the REM graphs as well. On making a graph like this in the past, you would only see combined view as the graph title. However, I've added an element now, so when you right-click and edit the graph type, you can now change the header so that you can actually title what the graph shows. As you can see here, we've added OSPL 90 and response curve. This is a HIT measurement, and you can actually change the title of the graph to reflect what you want to detail and what you want to show. We have improved the configuration of the shortcut manager. So in the previous suites, it was found that the PC shortcuts could be duplicated in other test screens. This meant that one key could have multiple functions depending upon the test screen that you were using. And this was found to be confusing. And therefore, we have changed this so that you can only apply one key to one function regardless of which test screen you're using. So as you can see here, we have attempted, I know it is very small, we have attempted to set F4 as a shortcut key within the CC window. However, the system is informing you to say it's already been used in a previous test screen. So please choose another button. The next feature I'd like to explain is more from a calibration and a technical user perspective, so for the calibration engineer. And we have defaulted some values for new transducers. So this means that when adding new transducers, there are some form of default values which are closer to the actual calibrated value. And this saves a lot of time for the calibration technician. So as I just show up the software screen now, so in the previous suite, this is how you would have been shown the software, the calibration values in the past. And notice that the slider is set to the minimum value. However, now when connecting a new transducer, the values are actually setting something is coming through. And this is much quicker because it saves the user having to slide them all the way up. And again, this is mostly a benefit for the calibration technician. Another common feature is that we've removed the need to restart in order to delete custom protocols. So it was found in the previous suite that in order to remove a protocol that you'd manually created, you had to restart the software. So on the next slide, I've got a nice video to show you how this is applying this now. And if I just press play. So what I'm doing here is you can see that I'm going into Menu and Setup and AC440 Setup. For the example of this video, I have used a custom protocol titled AC440 Dennis, and notice how it's shown in the main setup window here. And also in the background, we have the protocol in session reflecting the same protocol. So what you can see is as I delete this, it will delete both in the software and in the main setup. However, in the past, it would only delete in the setup and not in the software, needing the user to restart the software in order for the change to be applied. The next feature adds units to the CPT AMA and PTA averaging methods. And what you can see in the example below is that we are adding dB and percentage to each of these methods. And this is for the benefit of users who are not using these that often, as using PTA is in dB scale, and you needed a pre-knowledge of this if you were using that value. So this is just for clarity. The implementation of this does not require any other settings to be changed. Simply showing this averaging method will apply the correct unit. Another improvement within the audiometry module is that we have given a notification now that the hearing loss simulator is not possible to be performed with insert phones. So it is a known purpose built function that we cannot run the hearing loss simulator with insert phones with all of our systems. This is standalone audiometers and the Affinity, Equinox, and Callisto. Trying to do this in the past led to a crash in our system. You would get a crash dialog. However, we've improved this to notify the user instead of crashing the suite. So now on loading the hearing loss simulator with only insert phones calibrated and added to a system, you will get the message, you have not got a compatible calibrated transducer to perform this test. Please ensure this is performed to allow HLS testing. Okay, so we're moving into the REM module now, and we're going to start to discuss some of the improvements and changes that we've made in there. And the first one is improve handling of REM and visible speech mapping measurements and targets. This is my personal favorite improvement that we've made, and it was found that in previous suite versions, it was very difficult to run multiple REM and visible speech mapping measurements without cluttering the test screen. So what you can see from the example on the left here is there's many targets that have been applied and many measurements, and because they've been overlapped on one another, it's difficult to see which measurement belongs to which target. We've since cleaned this up so that the tests are much easier to run. So I've made a nice video on the next page to show you what changes we've done to improve the handling of this. So what you can see here is that on loading the protocol and increasing and decreasing the intensity, the target that you have on the start of the screen is moving, meaning that the default intensity set for the measurement is not fixed to the screen, so that we only have one target curve. After running the measurement, the target and the measurement will lock together so that they are associated. This means that they are then paired, and then on manipulation, they will not change. So notice that the measurement and the target remain on the screen because they are in use. They're paired together. On running the next measurement of a louder target intensity, you'll notice that it's also going to pair. For this example, this was run without a hearing aid connected, hence the measurement being away from the target. And now, because the two measurements are paired, it brings them into focus, so they're darker, and on enabling and disabling, it will remove both the target and the measurement from the test screen. And again, increasing and decreasing the target will allow you to see the different ones. Re-enabling them brings back in the target and the measurement together. On deleting them, it will delete now both the target and the measurement, whereas in the past it would only delete the measurement and leave the target on the screen, therefore cluttering the screen. Okay. So another feature which Affinity and Equinox users are probably familiar with already, as this is just an implementation for the Callisto suite only, is we have added the ability to import and add custom targets within the visible speech mapping screen. So when in the visible speech mapping module, clicking on this icon, which is Insert Edit Target, you will be shown this window, which will allow you to import your own figures, to import your own script target within the measurement. You can also edit the target within the measurement. And this is nice as it allows you to import proprietary fitting algorithms or edit the target that you're currently working with. Another feature purely for Callisto is the implementation of a button to set the IEC 60118-15 settings. And as mentioned at the start, this is used for percentile analysis. And again, Affinity and Equinox users will be familiar with this function. So if I just show you how this looks in the software, we've implemented this button, which is typically found in this location of the setup for this protocol and this measurement. So on clicking this button, it will automatically set the stimulus selection and the settings so that it's correct according to the IEC 60118-15 standard. Another feature which we've added, which previously used to crash the software in previous versions, is improve handling when opening REM sessions which have been recorded by other vendors. So it's known that we cannot open REM sessions which were measured by other manufacturers' equipment and software. And on attempting to open these in the past, the software will crash and give a crash dialog. And we've since improved this to notify the user instead of crashing. So now when attempting to launch a REM session recorded by a competitor software or competitor product, you will be shown the notification which says, this session cannot be reviewed as it was measured in a different system, instead of crashing. So again, I've shown you a nice video which explains this. So what you'll see here is we're going to load a session which has been measured in a competitor equipment, and whilst we boot up the Callisto, we will then go into the REM module. And on entering the REM module, you will see that we choose a session which was deliberately measured by a competitor system. And now when loading this, you'll be shown that notification. Because it was small, I've shown it in the previous screen, but it actually says you cannot review this as it wasn't measured by a Callisto. And this just gives ease of use and handling of the data. Another feature which we had in the past in monaural continuous measurements, but we've now implemented for binaural continuous measurements, is the feature which allows you to click on the intensity slider to reset the average of the target and of the measurement curve. And this is quite nice when you're measuring in an environment which is quite busy, or if there are disruptions, to quickly click on the intensity slider to reset the measurement to prevent you from having to stop the measurement and rerun it again. And this feature was previously available in monaural only, however we've put it in for binaural as well. And this is both for Affinity, Equinox and Callisto. So again, in the next screen, I've created a nice video. And what you will see here is the binaural measurement being run. And once we have a target curve and we let it run for a little bit, I will click onto the intensity slider, which will flicker the measurement and reset the average. There we go. So let's say if there was a disruption or somebody spoke or the patient moved, then without stopping and restarting the measurement, we could quickly reset the average and continue what we're doing rather than having to add time by restarting the measurement again. Finally, we've improved handling of no response AC data for null targets. So in our previous suites, it was necessary to manipulate no response AC thresholds to herd thresholds in order for null fitting algorithms to draw the targets with them. And we've since improved this so that the AC no response data are read by the REM module as herd data. This removes the need of the user to change the audiometry and add extra sessions. So as a practical example of this, what you can see is the audiogram in the previous versions would not previously draw a target within REM for null targets. And that's because at 4 kilohertz, which is one of the prerequisites and needed thresholds, is stored a no response target. And what this would mean is you would have to change this point here, manually change this point into a heard point so that a target would be drawn. However, now importing this data into the REM module will draw the target for you. Once again, I have a video to demonstrate this. And what you will see is that I'm importing an audiogram and deliberately not entering a heard point at 2 kilohertz. So I'll have no response there and continue to click. Once I've added this, I'll then move into the REM module and demonstrate with NAL2, although even though the examples are shown with NAL2 in this video, it also applies the same for NAL1. So let's just simulate in a unaided gain. And what you'll see is the target is now drawn without manipulating the audiometry. And I'll now show that this example is in insertion gain, but I can also show this for aided response. Once again, NAL2. And on choosing that, we will just quickly run an unaided response, simulated unaided response. And we can see that the target has been drawn without manipulation of the audiogram. Okay, so that was a handful of features that we wanted to promote and push for the new release. There are other features, and should you have anything that you wanted to ask about them, please contact our service department or me or Ola via our emails at the end of this presentation. I'd now like to come on to promoting some marketing materials. And again, if you attended my previous webinar, you may have seen some of these in the past, but we're representing them because we've updated them. So first of all, I'd like to begin with new brochures. The Affinity brochure is unchanged. However, we've updated the Callisto brochure to include HIT and the TBS-10. Moving into the next screen, we've updated the Callisto instructions for use. The Affinity instructions for use is still unchanged, and this is available in 18 different languages. And this is a quick guide to get you up and running to install the software and to do the basic functions within the different modules. Choose for Callisto, and we've also want to promote the 10 reasons to choose for the Affinity as well. Nice foldable leaflet which explains 10 reasons for why this product is good and promotes the key selling points. The additional information has been updated for Callisto, and the decision was taken that we would make an individual additional information for Callisto and a combined additional information for Affinity Equinox. This is a detailed description manual of all the features within the software and how to run and perform different tests. Although the Callisto manual has been added and changed, the Affinity and Equinox has not been changed for this release. However, it's still valid because the changes made were not affecting the core use and features. And this is your main go-to site for when looking for technical aspects or learning the system, as it details everything, including settings. Although these are unchanged, I wish to promote them again. We really like our quick guides, and we find that they're really good short guides to help new users quickly learn and perform different features with our systems. We really encourage that you translate these into your own languages as well, because they really do help the user if they have come from a previous system, and it also helps to reduce the learning curve. In addition, also want to promote the quick guide videos and Interacoustics YouTube channel, Interacoustics TV. This provides very short videos on some of the theoretical concepts which underlie the measurements that we do within our system. And should you wish to gain an education on how our system is performing different things, then you can quickly get the information here, and they're very useful. We have also started to translate some of these videos. I believe they're on the system in Russian now. And again, should you wish to add these for your own languages, then please do so. Finally, I'd like to promote the Interacoustics Academy webinars. So we've since, in the last quarter of last year, begun running webinars for different product areas. And these are slightly longer, so roughly 45 minutes to an hour, where they explain different tests and their theoretical concepts and the reason for why we're doing them. We run these every 2 weeks, and we aim to demonstrate different features. And I'm pleased to announce that there are already recorded webinars on the Interacoustics Academy website for RECD and REM. Should you not be able to attend these live, then they are recorded and you can watch them after they have been performed. So finally, thank you very much for listening. I hope it was useful for you, and I'd now like to welcome any questions, and I'll pass it back on to Hella.
Thank you very much, Dennis. As Dennis said, it's open for questions now, so please do not hesitate to write them in the instant message box on the left side of your screen. And Dennis and Ola are willing to answer any questions you might have. While people might be thinking about any questions they might have, I would like to ask Dennis and Ola if they have any common questions they would like to stress now.
Yes, thank you, Hella. So common questions that we've been asked from the previous webinar is, can the skull simulator be used with the TBS-10? And the answer to this is no. So for commercial segregation of the products, we've intended for this product, so the skull simulator, to only be Affinity. Are there any other limitations of the TBS-10 over the Affinity test box? And again, no. The system has the same frequency range and performance for intensity deliverance as the Affinity test box. And more specifically, Ola has created a comparison sheet which can be available from the sales toolbox. And this compares both the specs and performance of the Affinity test box with the TBS-10. Okay, so another question that we were asked yesterday was, can the HIT module be used with the coupler base? And the answer to this is no. It was a commercial decision for the HIT module to only be used and purchased with a TBS-10 for the Callisto. And this is also to maintain the quality of the measurements when working in a noisy environment. And then finally, one of the other questions that we were asked yesterday, can I view my Affinity HIT measurements in the Callisto suite? And the answer to this is yes. The data can be read into the Callisto suite from the Affinity and the Equinox, and it also works vice versa. So if you had made measurements in the Callisto using the TBS-10, you can also view these in the Affinity and Equinox suite. This is the same for HIT data and for RECD.
Thank you, Dennis. In the meantime, we received the questions. Dennis, you mentioned that the correct general suite settings need to be selected in the suite when connecting both the REM speaker and TBS-10. Will this default correctly when installing the software, or will there be a quick guide to this correct cable connection?
Okay, thank you, Hella and Megan, for asking the question. It won't default automatically. However, there will be a quick guide to detail how this should be done. Both the wiring installation that I showed and the demonstration is included in the additional information and the recommendation for the setup. We have, in fact, built a new setting into the general setup of both REM and HIT to allow you to configure TBS-10, and we've written explicitly TBS-10 against the setting, so that it is quite intuitive. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry, Ola's just whispered in my ear. It's also included in the technical release note as to how to attach this and configure it correctly for performance within the Callisto suite.
Thank you. Robert Kettelhaas from Holland also had a comment. I'm not sure if it maybe needs further explanation, but Robert says, I have seen similar problems with BC, no response thresholds, those also fixed. I think that's a question for Ole.
Yes, they are made also for bone, so you can say that even for taking the not heard in consideration for air conduction, it's also taking consideration for bone conduction. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. Another question, are the quick guides installed with software?
Okay. Yes, so we've taken the decision not to install these on the software. So we've not included this in the download of the software because it adds a lot of size. We wanted to include the manuals with this as well. However, if you have the software CD, then they will be included on the DVD. However, if you download the software from the website, then they will not be included.
Thank you. And a question concerning the battery adapter. Are they included in the TBS-10 or is it optional? I think that's for Ole.
Yes, I can answer that one. The battery adapter, battery drain meter is an optional thing if you're interested in having that option. So you need to buy it extra.
We're still open for further questions if you might have any. In the meantime, I could ask you, Dennis, when do you plan to release this new update?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, Hella. We do a final test burn of the software on Monday, and we intend to have it released and implemented for Wednesday next week. So for safety, we'll say by the end of next week. I think that's quite nice to say.
Thank you. Sounds good. It doesn't seem like there's any further questions. Before we end, I just again would like to pay attention to these different webinars that we are having, both in connection with launches and also the Interacoustics Academy webinars. You will receive invitations for all our webinars through a newsletter. You will receive it by an email, so please keep an eye on your email account and make sure to attend any of those who are interesting for you. And the webinars are recorded and they will be put on the extranet. And I hope that it will be available either in the end of this week or in the beginning of next week. Friday is bank holiday in Denmark, so we will not be in the office on Friday, but hopefully in the beginning of next week. And furthermore, all of the webinars that we are having will be announced on the website as well, on the extranet, and again on the Interacoustics Academy website. You can always get access to the Interacoustics Academy website through the interacoustics.com site. So please keep an eye on the webinars, on the intranet and extranet and the website. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. I think this is my final closure for today. In case you do have any questions, please feel free to send a mail to Dennis Mystery or to Ole Lundsgaard or to me. You can see the email addresses on the screen now. So please feel free to contact us. And I would like to say thank you all for coming and attending this webinar. I hope you received some useful information. Thank you and have a good day.